And by the way, you'll recall that our bathtub boy, Keith Olbermann, on MSNBC, spent weeks at the beginning of the year telling everybody that certain number of people returned to terrorism was a lie. Listen.
No, the only figures are the kinds of figures you'll hear are the propaganda numbers still being broadcast on places like CNN. That 61 released detainees have now been linked to some kind of terror activity. Professor Mark Denbo of Seton Hall told Rachel last week that he's been studying these released Gitmo statistics for a while. The Bush administration, he says, made at least 43 attempts to quantify the number of recidivist ex-detainees. And the professor said, quote, their numbers have changed from 20 to 12 to 7 to more than 5 to 2 to a couple to a few, 25, 29, 12, and then 24. Every time the number has been different. In fact, every time they give a number, they don't identify a date, a place, a time, a name, or an incident to support their claim. So here's a wild guess. The administration just made the numbers up like Joe McCarthy used to.
We have the Obama Department of Defense saying 1 in 7, 14%. Mr. Bathtub Boy, and your now totally discredited Mark Denbo of Seton Hall University. And not only that, once we determine that 1 in 7 have been released and have gone back to a jihad, well, let's just blame Bush for that. We didn't believe the numbers. We said they were lies. But if the numbers are true, it's Bush's fault. Listen once again to Mr. Bathtub Boy insert both of those AAA 13s into his mouth and chew mightily on his own feet.
Mr. Cheney, which orifice are you pulling these numbers from? You know, in the movie The Manchurian Candidate, the character basically loosed on Joe McCarthy had trouble remembering all the different numbers. His Lady Macbeth-like wife pointed out to him that the reason she kept changing the number of reported communists in the State Department was so that people would no longer be asking, are there communists in the State Department? But would begin only asking, how many communists are there? Eventually, she picked one number that her husband could remember, 57. She found it on the bottle of ketchup on the room service tray.
Yeah, the bottle of ketchup on the room service tray. Very, very condemning.
I'm the a-hole.
Well, you certainly are. But you have company now because the entire MSNBC crowd is now doing this backflip trying to say, oh, well, there were a bunch of people released who went back to the field of battle. Never mind what Bathtub Boy said earlier, that it was all lies. It is true, and that proves George Bush is responsible for putting killers on the loose into the world.
They let 500 out. Cheney is the guy who let 500 of them out of Guantanamo, released 500. And 14% of those went back to terrorism. And Cheney sees no problem in that. None at all.
I'd like to know which side is he on?
A proclamation of American values, a repudiation of the lawless behavior of the last presidential administration, and another speech announcing a radical new claim of presidential power that is not afforded by the Constitution and that has never been attempted in American history, even by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Remarkably, President Obama today made both of those speeches simultaneously.
Whoa, President Obama gave a speech in which he claimed that he could do something extra constitutional that not even George W. Bush or the evil Dick Cheney did. Oh, Bathtub Boy is upset. He brought her in there. We have one Obama cultist saying the worst possible thing you could say, which is he is now doing stuff that's worse than George W. Bush. And we have another Obama cultist who is in complete denial and must cope by lashing out violently and, I must say, incoherently.
Because the America he sought to impose upon the world and upon its own citizens, the dark, hateful place of Dick Cheney's own soul, the place he to this hour defends and to this day prefers, is a repudiation of all that our ancestors, all that for which our brave troops of 200 years ago and 2 minutes ago have sacrificed and fought.
Oh, my God.
Tried to lose a war, Keith.
He's really upset with Obama, isn't he? He can't even, I mean, normally he would be praising the beautiful words of the great president and the wonderful thoughts and and the constitutionality of it all, and the brilliance of this incredibly educated man who's somehow been brought to us and somehow we didn't reject, and instead all he can do is obsess about Dick Cheney.
9/11 caused everyone to take a serious second look at threats that had been gathering for a while, you said today, and enemies whose plans were getting bolder and more sophisticated. Gee, thanks for being motivated by the deaths of nearly 3,000 Americans to go so far as to take a serious second look. And thank you, sir, for admitting, obviously inadvertently, that you did not take a serious first look. For that attack, sir, you are culpable, morally, ethically. At best, you are guilty of malfeasance and eternally lasting stupidity. At worst, sir, in the deaths of 9/11, you are negligent.
Bathtub Boy got his name from me because he would not come to work at MSNBC when we were attacking Clinton during the Clinton impeachment. He could not bring himself to come in and attack somebody he worshipped, stayed in his bathtub, and made me do his show.
Taking a bath.
He does not recall that Bill Clinton took a pass on killing Osama bin Laden 9 times, according to Michael Scheuer, who was in charge of the bin Laden unit at the CIA. Instead of taking a hard look at what Clinton didn't do, he shovels the blame off on the guy who's had all those heart attacks.
The weakness the terrorists see, sir, is the weakness of judgment suspended in favor of self-fulfilling prophecy. The weakness the terrorists see, sir, is the weakness of moral force supplanted by violence and revenge fantasies. The weakness the terrorists see, sir, is the weakness of Dick Cheney.
See, sir, you go to war with moral force instead of violence and see how you fare. See, sir, if you had not had Dick Cheney standing guard for you, how you would have been in New York, someone who doesn't drive, can't get behind the wheel. What kind of man, by the way, doesn't drive?
Not much of a man.
What kind of man can't manage a steering wheel and a gas pedal?
It's a 25-year-old.
What kind of man thinks that our military needs to employ moral force rather than violence against our enemies?
Girly man.
This is what happens when Cheney forces Barack Obama out of the underbrush, makes him admit to his left-wingers he would use torture, he is in favor of prolonged detention, and he intends to do it. Some of his supporters scream, "Oh my God, he's turning into George Bush." Others can't face it.
Mr. Cheney, all you did was help kill Americans. And let me again quote Oliver Cromwell to you, Mr. Cheney. You have sat too long for any good you have been doing lately. Depart, I say, and let us have done with you. In the name of God, go.
Wow. I mean, there is somebody who just can't face it.
Oliver Cromwell.
Oliver Cromwell. The library of books of quotations must be extensive at the Bathtub Boy Manse.
Go.
I'd like him to go.
Untamed, unabashed, unafraid. He simply does not care.
Yes. Yes. John
Gibson.